Hello everybody, welcome back from Top the Wall. I'm Mason, your favorite Mason, and today I have another deck for you. I heard that the internet really liked Dredge, but I also heard that the internet also liked Enchantress. So, internet, I got you a thing. It's both of the things. Together, you like the things. So, here's the thing. So as I said, we are an Enchantress and a Dredge deck. How do those things fuse together? Well, turns out very, very well. We are, unlike the last and other Enchantress decks that I've made and other Enchantress decks that you've seen, this one is a little bit more consistent. It's not as overly potent or powerful. It doesn't try to combo off, but it is a deck that likes to outclass things, and it does so very consistently. Just like turn 7, turn 8 wins, and does play a rather interesting game. So, unlike other Enchantress decks where we try to lock out our opponent with a bunch of Prism cards, we are more so looking to use these as removal as necessary. Remove the bigger threats that we might need to get rid of. Qatar's Desire, a card that is a cheaper pacifism. It just mainly prevents them from attacking at first for the 1 white mana being cheaper. Then as we reach Threshold, which we will by dredging, they are no longer allowed to block. So it does the work of the pacifism, stopping them from attacking earlier, and then later, when it's necessary to keep them from blocking, it stops them from blocking. Temporal Isolation is a little bit more expensive, but it's flash to make up for it. It's like pacifism, but it works a little different. It's pseudo-pacifism with flash. It gives the creature shadow, and if you don't know what shadow is, creatures with shadow can only block or be blocked by creatures with shadow. So it can't block non-shadow creatures, which is most of the creatures in Magic the Gathering. And you prevent all damage that it would deal. So it has almost no point in attacking for damage, and it can't really block. So because we're not going Supermax Prison, we have to have an increased creature count to actually have a plan to stop our opponents from, just running us over every time there's any kind of aggro or heavy creature matchup. For that, we have cards like Satyr Wayfinder to get us a land, and, well, because it replaces itself, it's a 2-for-1. It blocks for us, gains us a little bit of life, or later it's a creature, which is important, as you'll see later. We have the Skole Grove Dancer, which is another enchantment and a creature at the same time. So it both increases our creature and enchantment count, and it passes the vanilla test. It does some good stuff for us by both putting cards into our graveyard and gaining us some life. So it's good on defense, and it's good later to count for both things. Nexus Wardens are good creatures that can block for us in the air and the ground, gain us that life. Cards that you've seen me use last time. New good card that I wanted to make sure was in here. And our big one, instead of the Brine Giant or something like Curse of the Bloody Tome, I wanted to include Yavimaya Enchantress. Yavimaya Enchantress actually gets +1/+1 for each enchantment on the battlefield, not just ours, but our opponents. So it is easily and consistently a 3-mana 7/7 or a 3-mana 8/8. Awesome card. Just awesome thing to have. Always good to have a Yavimaya Enchantress. And because we have a lot of creatures and we like enchantments, I threw in Torch of Existence, just 2. We don't want a ton of them, because when you have more than one, they don't really tend to do a whole lot for you to have redundancy for Tortured Existence. And it likes having extra creatures, and it's an enchantment, so it increases our enchantment account for the Yavimaya Enchantress, and we can end up taking those smaller creatures that we might not like so much, and later throwing them back out into the graveyard to get back maybe a downed Yavimaya Enchantress or something else that we might want. So we do have more ways to get value out of the graveyard besides Tortured Existence. We have Omen of the Dead, another enchantment that increases our enchantment account. But it is good because it's just 1 black mana, has flash, returns a creature card from a graveyard to our hand. So it is a 2-for-1. It exists as an enchantment, making our Yavimaya Enchantress bigger, and at the same time gets us back potentially a Yavimaya Enchantress or another creature, which we can throw away with Tortured Existence to get back any of the other creatures later. can sacrifice itself to scry 2, so we can end up using it much later when our enchantment count is more than high enough. And the Monk Idealist is a creature that can end up also increasing our enchantment count, not by being an enchantment itself, but by just simply getting one back from the graveyard to our hand. So as we dredge, if we end up dredging over a enchantment card, we can play the Monk Idealist to get back the enchantment card, essentially drawing us an enchantment. We get a 2/2 plus an enchantment of our choice from our graveyard. It's nice to have that card selection. It can end up counting as pseudo card advantage in some cases. Now, we do need ways to put all of these things into our graveyard. So, you might have been eyeing the Moldervine Cloak, our only dredge card. It only dredges us a little bit, but that's completely fine. We have other ways to help with that. Moldervine gives a creature +3/+3 for 3, and it has the dredge too, so we can end up just putting those cards down and picking this thing back up every time that we end up drawing a card. And it's one of the ways that we stay so consistent and keeping that enchantment count high and making sure that we're able to outclass our opponents. So I mentioned the other ways that we increase our graveyard size and stack our graveyard. We have Vessel of Necromancy, Nascency. Right. So we have Vessel of Nancy. Vessel of Nancy is an enchantment, but it's also a cantrip when we sacrifice it later to put 4 cards into our graveyard, but choosing to take one of them that we reveal and put that one into our hand. Luckily, it can be a artifact, creature, enchantment, or land, or planeswalker. Only 3 of those things matter. And that puts things into our graveyard, so we can specifically start digging things over to get that Moldervine Cloak. We also have Crufix's Insight, another card that reveals 6 cards from the top of our library, and we can put up to 3 enchantment cards from among them into our hand and the rest into the graveyard. Frequently, we will see those 3 enchantments, so for 3 mana, we can get that 3 for 1, which I love doing that. I very much do like paying 3 mana for 3 cards. That's not a bad rate. 1 mana per card, and we get to put other things into our graveyard. Now onto our mana base. Our mana base is a little bit warped to take more advantage of the Grove Dancer, because the Grove Dancer says whenever we put a land card from anywhere into our graveyard, we gain the 1 life. So that means every time that Ash Barrens is cycled, every time that we use an Evolving Wilds or a Terramorphic Expanse, that means we end up getting 1 life out of it. So we essentially get these slow fetch lands that gain us life, and they do fix us. So we're spending all this time working around our 3-color mana base, fixing ourselves, but we can end up using it to gain some life out of it. Plus, when we're dredging and putting things into our graveyard with, like, let's say, Satyr Wayfinder, and the Molder Cloak, and the Vessel, and the Crufix's Insight, we're ending up putting in sometimes 3 land cards into the graveyard. So just having this extra little kick on Crufix's Insight, like, oh, gain another 3 life, gain another 3 life. Isn't that nice? We're able to just fix ourselves, gain that life, so we can actually just end up recovering if we're taking damage because of our slower mana base. And the Abundant Growth does help cover us a lot of the time. Quick little note about Crufix's Insight. Although it is a good card, you don't want too many of it, because very frequently you'll see that it's a little slower. And we don't want to slow ourselves down too much, because that'll mean that we are completely vulnerable to any kind of faster deck, any kind of aggro deck or deck that can take advantage of us when we're playing a little bit slower. So I wanted to just keep it out at a solid 3 instead of that 4. Onto the sideboard now. There's a few things that we are still afraid of in this deck. We are still very much worried about certain Boggle matchups where they might end up landing a Ledgewalker, and we have to live with the Ledgewalker being there on the battlefield and just being able to poke us rather easily because maybe we didn't find the Nexus Warden. It's not the best matchup for us. So Calming Verse can destroy all the enchantments that we don't control, and as long as we're tapping out for it, we can end up just making sure that it's one-sided. It's one of the few cards that is a one-sided Wrath for the enchantments. We also still have the Ray of Revelation. For the Delver matchups and the Graveyard matchups, Curse of Oblivion can actually... I know I said I would not be sideboarding against Tron, and I'm not, but for those of you who actually have to care to deal with Tron. Curse of Oblivion can end up getting rid of some graveyards over time, so a little bit of help here or there against Tron, and a little bit of help against the blue-black decks and the Delver decks. Speaking of Delver, Hidden Spider. What's great about enchantments that can fight Delver? 1 mana, 3/5 reach. Ooh, that's a good spider. Some catch-all removal with Journey to Nowhere. Moment's Peace for Fog that we can end up dredging over, which is rather nice. We still fear tokens. But I didn't want to be in that 5-color mess that I was before. So, Nausea, give all the creatures -1/-1, and have that as our replacement for Electrickery to fight the elves and the tokens. Cartouche of Ambition is another way to fight smaller creatures like the Delvers and the elves, and a few of the mid-range matchups can really be turned around using Cartouche of Ambition, giving our creatures lifelink, and can actually help turn around some of the Pestilence matchups by giving one of our larger creatures this +1/+1 in lifelink. We can end up swinging in, gaining back a bunch of life, flipping the game on our opponent very, very quickly. And if they're playing Monarch Pestilence, we can actually use this to remove the 1 toughness that their the Thorn of the Black Rose has. So Death Touch no longer matters, and we can swing in fine, scot-free, potentially steal the Monarch even with no consequence. And our opponent has the game flipped on them. Oh god, I love that idea of just flipping the game on Pestilence. We also like to do unfair things just like Boggles. We have the Ledgewalker as a kind of alternate win condition against the removal heavy matchups. Something like against the Flyers decks or the Delver decks or the black decks that are spotting like a ton of removal. We can end up playing the Ledgewalker, and we can end up using Moldervine Cloak, make it huge, and just keep getting in repeatedly without any kind of repercussion for that. Weather the Storm to fight off Burn, because we still need to. They are more than fast enough to challenge us. And that's all for the deck. I want to talk about Tron real quick. The last video I said that I think something in Tron should be banned. I don't believe that something... I take that statement back. I don't believe that something needs to be banned in Tron. I believe that there needs to be a deck or some kind of card that Tron can't really make great use out of and needs to be like a counter for Tron. As the game goes longer and longer for Tron's not going to be able to outclass whatever this card is, and it's not going to be able to play off of this card very well. And I feel that there needs to be something like that in the meta to shut down that super late game deck that is Tron, that powerhouse. A rather annoying creature that other decks can't, that a lot of decks can't take the full advantage of, and neither can Tron. So special decks would need to be made around it that could act as a kind of counter for Tron. Something to balance it out, to make sure that Tron isn't always tier 1 at all times, and there's not occasionally like 2 different Tron decks in tier 1, which is annoying to see in top 8. Oh, there's 3 Tron decks. Great! I do like Tron, but I don't like seeing one deck on top of the format. So to wrap it up, I am letting you know that this deck is on tapped.net, and the link is down below. And if you enjoy this deck, make sure to share it with your friends. And if you think that there's something that I got wrong about this deck, like maybe you think that there's some cards in here that should be in here, maybe we should be using more of these openers or whatnot, go ahead and let me know down below, and you can go ahead and make